I have prepared an overview statement based on my work these many past weeks. And I want to just say that as a parent and as a patriot, I'm absolutely outraged by what we're allowing to happen to our children. Humanity is judged on how you treat the weakest member of the society. Let me say that although pedophilia, which says child love, has nothing to do with the abuse of children, these children are not just kidnapped and in some cases bred by families as a cash crop. We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill them and have no one ask where they are. We're also importing children by the plane load. Again, children who have no documentation. It's not just child slavery or child sex abuse. It's also child torture because you have adrenalized blood. You have the whole blood drinking ceremony of the satanic world. It's also the use of children for harvesting body organs. We'll have the Falun Gong testimony tomorrow. One of the reasons that the Falun Gong are so popular is because they're so healthy, so that you can harvest their body organs and get the very best. And then you have ritual ceremonies and ritual murder, as well as incidental murder. The other working assumption is how long do these children survive within this system? What I am hearing from the witnesses that I've talked to is 2 years. It may be longer, it may be 4 years, it may be 6 years, but by and large, these children are so abused. I mean, we're talking rapes by the hour and so forth, that they reach their expiration date within 2 years. And then they're murdered with impunity, or they're ritually murdered if that's what they've been bred for. So I think we need to document this. No one else has done this before in a systematic manner. This commission is rendering a signal service by seeking to do an overall view in the public interest.
The greatest injustice of our time is widespread human trafficking and child sex abuse. And evidence is now mounting that this injustice may be far more sinister than before shared in the public domain, and lead to the highest reaches of religious, secular, and governmental world leadership.
It is the hope and expectation of this court that the official commission report will act as the catalyst to a great awakening of people of the world to the horror of human trafficking and child sex abuse. Once brought to light, the lives and futures of millions of tormented souls will be transformed forever. That is the pledge, and that is the covenant which binds all of us here to millions of people of the world who are watching these proceedings and who, by the grace of God Almighty, will be the standing army to this most noble undertaking. Just a pre-recorded message from former Congresswoman Dr. Cynthia McKinney.
Honorable Justices, Your Grace, and my fellow commissioners of the ITNJ. When I confronted former U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld in Congress about whether or not it was government policy to reward corporations like DynCorp for sex trafficking, it was intended to throw light on the very narrative which the Commission of Inquiry is now enacting. The horror of these atrocities and the suffering of millions of souls is made all the worse by systemic collusion of factions within trusted institutions, government agencies, child care services, social services, and even churches around the globe. The scale of human trafficking and child abuse must surely be the most untold story of our civilization. 25 million souls every year. 8 million of them are children. Billions upon billions of dollars are being generated. Being generated by whom? The travesty is that we more or less know the answers and certainly are able to determine those answers with little effort. But that effort is not being undertaken. It is not being undertaken by the very agencies and institutions that are mandated to protect and serve good people of the world, in villages, in towns, in cities across our globe. Some of my fellow commissioners within this Judicial Commission of Inquiry are world-leading experts in statistical analysis of tracking and of identifying remedy to these seminal concerns. As this Commission of Inquiry unfolds, we will make known to the world the sheer scale of human trafficking and child sex abuse. We will not balk from this duty of care, and we will be joined by millions of people the world over, concerned citizens, concerned mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers alike. I look forward to presiding at the Commission seating in the United States in the months ahead and wish my colleagues every success with this 3-day seating in Westminster, London, of all places. Thank you very much, and may God bless us all.
ITNJ's Chief Counsel, Robert David Steele, CEO of Earth Intelligence Network. Robert was recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize and is a former operations officer in the clandestine service of the CIA, for which he's well known. He is was co-founder of the Marine Corps Intelligence Activity, and he is a most able commissioner on the ITNJ, and we're delighted to introduce him as Chief Counsel to this Commission of Inquiry into Human Trafficking and Child Sex Abuse. Robert David Steele.
Let me say first off that this is a court of inquiry. It's not an adversarial court. It's a nonprofit educational event. And with enormous energy and intelligence, all of us have been brought together to try to bring out some of the aspects. So if I may, I have prepared an overview statement based on my work these many past weeks. And I want to just say that as a parent and as a patriot, I'm absolutely outraged by what we're allowing to happen to our children. Humanity is judged on how you treat the weakest member of the society. Let me say that although pedophilia, which says child love, has nothing to do with the abuse of children, these children are not just kidnapped and in some cases bred by families as a cash crop. We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill them and have no one ask where they are. We're also importing children by the plane load. Again, children who have no documentation. It's not just child slavery or child sex abuse. It's also child torture, because you have adrenalized blood. You have the whole blood drinking ceremony of the satanic world. It's also the use of children for harvesting body organs. We'll have the Falun Gong testimony tomorrow. One of the reasons that the Falun Gong are so popular is because they're so healthy, so that you can harvest their body organs and get the very best. And then you have ritual ceremonies and ritual murder, as well as incidental murder. I have been a spy. I'm out from undercover. I'm under a lifetime secrecy agreement. I absolutely tell you without doubt, I have no secrets that I can remember. If when I go to Iran soon, they can torture me, there's nothing there for them to get. But I know the system. I've been a spy all over the world. I have created the Marine Corps Intelligence Command. I have trained intelligence and law enforcement representatives, over 8,000 of them from across 66 countries. They are all, without exception, good people trapped in a bad system. And one of the most wonderful things that this court could achieve, now that we've had Pizzagate for example, which opened people's mind, is we could achieve an opening of the public mind and an absolute imperative from the public to governments, including the U.S. government, which I think is the center of gravity in so many ways. I have found in my research in preparation for this court and all of the work that will follow that most organizations that end up being used to prey on children, Oxfam is a recent example, all of the United Nations organizations, the Boy Scouts of America, all of the child services agencies across the United States of America, they did not start out as organizations to prey on children, but they attract pedophiles. And ultimately, pedophiles end up rising in the ranks and controlling those organizations, so that an organization that initially started out in the service of children becomes an organization that is in fact hunting children. And one of our distinguished commissioners has written an absolutely wonderful book called Child Hunters, which I recommend to all of you as a brief on this. Governments are letting us all down. And I absolutely agree with the commissioner who brings forward the need to restore the sovereignty of we the people, because governments have become not only bureaucratized, but they are now the servants of the deep state, of the banks. And if I may, the deep state is not the same as the shadow government. As I say, every organization is 90% good people trapped in a bad system. It's the highest 10% that is generally the rogue killer element. The shadow government is generally politicians. I won't speak to England, but in the United States of America, we have a two-party tyranny, which disenfranchises 70% of the public. And so they run this chimera of an election process. One of the problems with computers is they're too easily manipulated. In the United States of America, elections are decided before the first vote is cast. The electronic voting machines are essentially fraudulent machines, just as computers can record a fraudulent judgment that sticks with you forever, or make a child vanish. I am concerned because most of these organizations dealing with children don't have counterintelligence protection. They're not vetting the people that are moving up in the ranks, and the government is allowing that to happen. So what you have essentially is the pedophiles generally appear to be the most wonderful, sociable people. You know, let Sally sit on Uncle John's lap because he's such a loving uncle. Unbeknownst to people, Uncle John is actually a predator. We're not doing the counterintelligence at the local level, the province level, or the national level. It's absolutely essential that we begin to talk about this openly. And while we are not a law enforcement commission, we can in fact turn information over to law enforcement. And I believe we will render a signal service to the people of Great Britain and to other countries by being a magnet for information. It's been my experience that when you put out one piece of free information, it attracts 100 pieces of information from others, of which 10 are priceless. So there's a 10-to-1 return on investment. And this commission seeks to create an online library and some other things that I'll talk about in a moment. And I believe we will serve as a magnet, a hub, a catalyst for a new emerging global consciousness about pedophilia and all of its aspects. There is great cause for alarm. There are two great causes for alarm beyond the actual fact of pedophilia and its existence, which, as His Grace has pointed out, has gone on for centuries. First, the elite appear to be seeking to infect local and provincial law enforcement officers with a taste for pedophilia. There appears to be a very deliberate attempt to push this interest in pedophile movies, including movies that include bestiality. I'm very concerned because we're seeing some snuff movies now, and we're seeing some movies in which military war dogs are raping children, including toddlers. And these movies may have come out of the American occupation of Afghanistan and the boredom of U.S. Army and Marine Corps troops, where in Afghanistan, pedophilia is common. It's a standard practice at the village level. But military war dogs plus common pedophilia and video cameras, which every U.S. soldier and Marine has is a very, very toxic combination. And I'm seeing direct evidence that that is one of the most horrible things that's come out of Afghanistan in recent years. Now, let me also tell you that we have a second concern, and the witness has really most magnificently outlined asset stripping. The core message from this asset stripping is that the same machine that strips children from families strips wealth from those who are being preyed upon. Not just whistleblowers, but, as we'll hear on Wednesday, husbands stupid enough to try and hide their money by moving it offshore so that they don't have to share with their wife. What husbands do when they turn over their money to intermediaries who are part of this system is mark themselves as a target. They might as well paint a target on their forehead, because they have now become prey for a system that recognizes people who are asking to be made destitute. Now, it's not my working assumption, but the working assumption yet to be proven that the totality of the children disappearing worldwide is toward 8 million people, toward 8 million children. In the United States of America, the acknowledged number, not counting the children being bred without birth certificates, not counting the children being imported without documentation, is between 600 and 800,000 a year. Now imagine Africa and East Asia and all these other locations. I personally believe that the number we want to try to document is rising well beyond the official figures, and we have yet to learn what the actual number is. Okay? The other working assumption is, how long do these children survive within this system? What I am hearing from the witnesses that I've talked to is 2 years. It may be longer. It may be 4 years. It may be 6 years. But by and large, these children are so abused. I mean, we're talking rapes by the hour and so forth, that they reach their expiration date within 2 years. And then they're murdered with impunity, or they're ritually murdered if that's what they've been bred for. So I think we need to document this. No one else has done this before in a systematic manner. This commission is rendering a signal service by seeking to do an overall view in the public interest. This will be a massive, massive undertaking. And while the preliminary attempt is to do a 6-month to 9-month endeavor, subject to funding availability and the availability of witnesses and also prisoners, there are a number of prisoners who can be debriefed, who, when properly debriefed by specialists, can really give a deeper understanding that has not been achieved by existing law enforcement and other agencies, because they simply treat these people, when they catch them, in those rare instances when they catch them, as disposable goods to be thrown into prison and forgotten about. And tomorrow we will have some expert testimony from one of our commissioners who can speak to this far, far better than I. William Binney is my counterpart. He is for NSA what I am to CIA, which is to say, he is saying, as I am saying, that we can delete 70% of our respective organizations and put the other 30% to work. But Binney is also the author of Thin Thread, which is a way of doing deep discovery in unstructured databases and the internet. And so he is prepared to actually help us do pedophilia tracking worldwide. And one of the things that the other technical commission, Stephen Arnold, is very good at is de-anonymizing the internet. This includes every image having a fingerprint. So you can take an image of a child being abused, and you can track that image through the dark web. So there are resources that we can bring to bear in support of this commission's mission. My favorite technical commission is Arno Reuser from the Netherlands, who is a master librarian. He is so good that when the Dutch intelligence community realized it didn't know enough about the world, they recruited him to create the Open Source Intelligence Center for Dutch intelligence. And as with the endeavors that I helped create in the United States, and in fact for Scotland Yard, very quickly people found out that they could get 40 to 60% of what they knew very cheaply using open sources of information. That's not what government intelligence agencies do today. They want to spend as much money as possible in the riskiest way possible on the most expensive way possible. They're not actually there to do decision support or answer questions. So I believe that Arno Reuser is capable of creating the world's first digital library on pedophilia. And this would be a multilingual library to include local dialects. And it would be a library that would then end up being what we call a magnet for walk-ins. We want to have a very professional ingestion system so that people can volunteer to provide expert witness to the thing, or they can volunteer to offer up their papers. There are a number of pedophiles now who are actually ready to turn over their diaries. All right, so I think we're actually doing something really, really huge. My final comment. The center of gravity for taking down the deep state. Pedophilia is both the induction glue. Pedophilia is how the deep state recruits and controls people. It is also the Achilles heel of the deep state. I believe that once the public realizes that the government is not protecting their children at a scale of vulnerability that we can articulate, then everything else about the government is called into question. All right? So for me, this is a truly righteous endeavor. And I will end by saying that as much good as it might do to get the British angry, for me, the center of gravity for change is the American public. Because if you can get the American public angry, we will stop supporting dictators overseas. We will close all of our military bases overseas. I am on record as a former CIA operations officer saying that our 1,000 bases overseas are not there for national defense. They're there to serve as lily pads for the smuggling of guns, gold, cash, drugs, and small children. So let me say I am proud to be in your company, and I believe that no matter what we do or do not do, it is going to make a difference. God bless you all.
This afternoon, we're listening to the live testimony of two beloved friends who have traveled here in order to tell their stories, give their testimony to this Judicial Commission of Inquiry. We welcome them greatly. I will give a very brief introduction to our first key witness. This is Christy Allen, who's flown in from the United States of America. Christy is a former highly awarded female vocalist in the Mormon Church. She had an acclaimed singing career, which ended upon a spiritual awakening where she was forced to face the sudden realization that she and her many siblings had been embedded in the MK Ultra SRA program. Now, this is a program not known in the mainframe, but something which we hope and trust, Christy, that you'll be able to enlighten us to in this courtroom.
My story is about a Mormon family who were part of the MK Ultra program started by Operation Paperclip and masterminded by our original handler, Mr. Greenhog. To us, he was Mr. Greenhog, but there is reasonable evidence to suggest that his real name was Joseph Mengele, who always liked to use names with the word green in them. My family were used as entertainers, child pilots in wars, medics, special messengers, high-priced call girls, presidential models, sports figures, and international spies. There were 13 children, and then my mother raised one more. This story is about generational incest, abuse, CIA kiddie porn distribution, and satanic ritual families that have no idea what they are involved in on a conscious level. It's about mind wipes, controlling those that have the most to offer. It's about how the priesthood, sacred societies, Freemasonry, and a satanic pedophilic agenda is widely used to control governments, religions, and local police to do their bidding. The darkness loves to hide behind the light. So it may shock you to hear about a Mormon bishop that tried to rape a friend of mine right after she got married. And this was the same high-up Mormon priesthood leader that later officiated in a satanic ritual where he almost got away with raping, killing, and offering my sisters up to an unknown god in the Salt Lake City temple. It's time to talk about what happened in the Salt Lake temple. Now, April and Priscilla had been mad at each other, so what followed was kind of a miracle. April began to talk. Then Priscilla finished her sentence, and then Dawn contributed, and pretty soon they were all talking at once. Dawn was hiding under the furniture in the living room. They were crying and hysterical, and it was everything I could do to calm them down. What I pieced together from their testimonies that day is that in October of 1972, we were to sing in a regional children's choir for the Saturday morning session. My little sisters, Dawn and Priscilla, had gotten lost just before we were to sing, so my father sent April and I to run and go find them. We heard them screaming when we ran down some tunnels under the parking garage to the basement of the temple. When we got close to the screams, we heard a newborn baby crying. The baby suddenly stopped crying as soon as we got to the entrance room with a big red poinsettia on the floor, where we found our little sisters. 8-year-old Priscilla was being placed on a black altar with a red tablecloth. We were frozen in fear at the door when we realized that a man in black and red robes, similar to the white ones worn in Mormon temple ceremonies, was cutting out the heart of the little baby we heard crying. We knew that this man was a high-up leader in the church even then, but who eventually became the prophet of the church. This man recently died. He held a jeweled dagger as he held the lifeless body and tiny heart and took a bite out of it. April and I had seen enough. Dawn had found a hiding place under a piece of furniture, and while I was fetching Dawn, April grabbed Priscilla and said, "Those are my little sisters, and you can't have them." Bullets whizzed past our heads as we ran, but we somehow made it down to the end of the hallway without being killed by the men in dark suits. Ritualistic child abuse is the most hideous of all child abuse. The basic objective is to systematically terrorize children until they are forced to dissociate. The torture is the execution of a well-planned, well-thought-out ritual, often performed by close relatives. The only escape for the children is to dissociate, where they will develop a new personality to enable them to endure the abuse. This new personality is very helpful to the abusers. Once the abuse is over, the core personality is not conscious of what happened. Dissociation also serves the purposes of the occult because the children have no day-to-day memories of the atrocities. They go through adolescence and early adulthood with no active memory of what is taking place, but continue in rituals through their teens and early 20s, unaware of their involvement. The victims lead relatively normal lives until they get triggered and flashbacks or nightmares occur. Now keep in mind that this is, and always has been, about money and power. It's about keeping the drug cartels, violent gangs, human trafficking, sex trade, child trafficking, child porn industry, and human slavery as alive and lucrative as possible. To give you an idea of the large sums of money involved, some children, even immigrants, are used in snuff films and dissected live for organ harvesting for Planned Parenthood, and their body parts sold to hospitals for between $90,000 and $225,000, depending on the organ. Children with great DNA are also sold to families willing to buy them. Many of us have heard of the excretion called adrenochrome. The Satanists remove children's adrenal glands right after they've been terrorized and right before they are killed in rituals to extract this Kool-Aid the elites use to sustain their youth and extend their lives.
How long you been doing this?
12 years.
How do you do it?
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade.
Señor Timoteo, tú rescatas niños, ¿verdad? Quizá puedas ayudarme a encontrar a mi hermana.
Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed. What would we do?
Shivering stars drift around in the sky.
We're Homeland Security. You know we can't go off rescuing kids in Colombia.
I like all
This job tears you to pieces. This is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
We're talking about extracting an 11-year-old girl from an army of rebels.
Not just her. I'm talking about rescuing hundreds of kids.
She could be a block down the road, or she could be in Moscow, Bangkok, LA.
Over 2 million children a year are being sucked into the deepest recesses of hell. If we do nothing, someday it's gonna reach the likes of you. What if this was your daughter?